worldwide. Welcome to today's edition on a very, what do we say, on the general topic of the day, leadership and culture with Professor Dr. James Small, who would be joining us in a couple of minutes. There's just a small delay there. But I hope all of you are doing fine wherever you're watching from. We want to welcome you onto this topic for today. Yes, right. And we want to discuss or have a conversation on Africa's old and young leaders. What are the facts we should know? What has leadership on the continent in terms of our culture and the way our past, our kingdoms were ruled? A lot of the leadership models that we see, even having the conversation with Dr. Oba yesterday, talked about the basic fundamentals that Africans need to know about leadership and even the longevity. How were our kingdoms being ruled? In the West, we also see kingdoms and monarchs that are there forever. I mean, when we talk about even the Great Britain, we see the Queen Elizabeth. She's been more than 80 years and she's still that. So are we in a kind of a mixture of a system where we have the political structure and the traditional structure? Are these systems colliding in Africa? What is it that we should know about the fact that, Africa's leadership is like we say, it's an all leadership. Okay, those are things we're going to be listening to this conversation as usual with Professor Dr. James Small. But also, we've been having a couple of breaking news on what is apparently seems like a very subtle conflict in the Yoruba between the Yoruba and the Hausas. It's not official, but it could lead to another kind of a civil unrest in Nigeria. And we're already passing out the message of sensitization on how we can and measures that could be taken to already stop that potential conflicts. Like in the cases where we're having Uganda and the rest of the continent on this civil unrest. So what is it that we can do, and what should we know even about the current situation, about that outbreak between the Yorubas in Nigeria and Hausas? We will still get a lot of insight and information on that recent development. I hope our guest for today could be able to give us an overview or a short background about the situation, if that's the case. If not, Professor Dr. James Small is always going to be here with us and on history and culture and leadership. Those are his topics as well as others. Yeah, so I guess is right there in the studio. So please let us welcome him and we continue the conversation. Yes, Doug, Prof.
Hi. I'm sorry. I was an hour ago, I was sitting in ABC's studio in Brooklyn with Giancarlo Esposito and Forrest Whitaker. And I goes like, I got to go. They said, you got to go. I said, I got to go because I got to be on Miss Susan Tata's show. They said, who's that? I said, well, y'all need to watch YouTube tonight. So they all said hello to you. They said, if I'm rushing off, it must be special. I go like, it's special.
Thank you so very much. I mean, for breaking us such a huge conversation out there on ABC. Wow, that must be mega big, of course. And
an ABC Disney 4 TV movie called The Godfather of Harlem. And it's starring Forrest Whitaker and Giancarlo Esposito, Nigel Thatch playing Malcolm X, Adam Clayton Powell, Bumpy Johnson. We even have a role of Dr. King, Muhammad Ali. It's going to be powerful when it comes out.
Wow. And what was the interview about? Were you about to introduce it? Because that would be interesting for us to also have a conversation here.
No, I'm the consultant on the film.
Okay. Wow. So I mean, like I said, in future when it comes out, you'll be able to give us maybe an insight and the storyline on it. Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. And once more, welcome. Yesterday we had Dr. Obati Shakar. You aware of this great He kept talking about, my junior brother, Professor James Small, and he was so like in our audience, we were so excited, like this is the kind of connection and the unity that we see between you great scholars and experts out there. What more can we know about him?
He's Dr. Shaka and I, we've been friends about 40 years in the movement. He comes from a very political activism background, an organizer in California and across the nation. He's an author of multiple books on our struggle, our culture, and our history. He's been a professor and a head of the Africana Studies at San Francisco State University. Very involved, and was even involved in helping to train our new vice president when she was a young lady. Her mother was very active in the Black movement, and she, Kamala Harris, grew up in the Black activist movement in California.
Okay.
So I think we're going to see some surprises from her, because she does have a very positive background in our struggle.
This is good news, I think. I hope. Yeah. So yesterday, Prof, he talked something because we were also on leadership, and the topic was on the leadership model that works for Africa. And he gave very critical, but also very knowledgeable stance on the situation that we have on the continent. Just like he said, just being Black is not enough, but the mind, if our minds are not Black, so it doesn't represent anything. And that the leadership structure that we're having on the continent, most of these leaders have studied in the and own Western education. So it could be critical. What is your opinion on that, particularly on the leadership and the situation currently going on in Nigeria?
Well, first look at the structures. Most of the structures we have on the continent, we inherited from the colonizers. As we were achieving our freedoms in the 50s, 60s, and 70s, the colonizer was at the table helping to form those governmental structures. And in most cases, they did not take into account the ethnic nations. You're going to create a country called Nigeria. There was no country called Nigeria before the colonizers came after the Berlin Conference. And so the British decided you had the Yoruba nation, you had the Igbo nation, you had the Fulani nation, or House of Fulani nation, and they grouped them all together because they were exploiting them all together. So rather than sit down and work out, where do y'all want to go? Do you want a separate Yoruba nation? Do you want a separate Igbo nation? Because that's what you had before the colonizers came. But they lumped us all together, knowing there was conflict between the Islamic element and the traditional Yoruba element and the traditional Igbo element. And so you have an Igbo element that is very dominantly Christian. You have a Yoruba element that is dominantly traditional Yoruba. And then you have a Fulani element that is predominantly Muslim. And without really dealing with the conflicts, the historical conflicts around both land and ethnicity, they lumped us together politically in what started out as a federated state, where the three elements had sort of semi-independence. But over the years, with the interference from the shale oil and BPP corporate structures stealing the oil of the people of Nigeria, stealing the wealth, they've also influenced the government and caused the assassination of a number of our leaders to put people in that would play their role so that they can continue to rob us of our natural resources and get away with it. And so they created laws on the federal level that really took away the autonomy of the three autonomous regions. And now you have a federal government that's run primarily by Muslims in terms of the military, the police, and the federal government. And the Muslims have been doing some very terrible things in the Southwest and encroaching into the Yoruba forests and making, threats that we're going to stay in the Yoruba forest and in your land. And so the Yorubas are saying, no, this is our land. And this is when we created this nation, we agreed that our territories would be autonomous and not contiguous. And so this has changed over the years and is causing ethnic conflict. First, it seemed to be a question between herders and farmers, the cattle herders and the farmers struggling over land. But it has gone way beyond that now, where you're looking at people proselytizing their religious belief and trying to enforce that on other people. And you've got the Saudi Arabians people in there backing the houses in Fulani. You got the British, you've got the Americans who Boko Haram could have been stopped, but it was the American government that stepped in and blocked that from happening. So the West, what we call the colonizers and the imperialists, they still have major footprints in Africa. And most of our leaders were educated by them in their capitals, in their university, and tutored by them, and supported and backed by their philanthropic foundations to stay in government, to manipulate elections and that sort of thing, as well as the intelligence apparatus from the US, the British, and the French. The French have more soldiers stationed in Africa than they have in France. That's ridiculous. In Chad, in Niger, in Mali, in Burkina Faso, and Cote d'Ivoire, you've got more French army on the continent of Africa than you have in France. And the arrangement the French made in order to give us the fake independence that they've given us. And the French is responsible, along with the West, the British and the Americans, for the assassination of over 26 of our leaders, those who tried to break away from the colonial ties. Sankara, Patrice Lumumba, Immanuel Cabral, and others, just to name a few. And so what we have to realize is that colonialism is not over. Imperialism is not over. That we never really had a chance to adjust for colonialism and imperialism. And we never had a chance to put the African state together. We have these Western models of the nation state. That doesn't work for them. We just saw Washington, D.C. They had to bring in 50,000 military just to protect the president to have an inauguration. So it's not working for them. We see what happens in France, in Germany, and Italy when there's election times. But they've imposed those structures on us. When we have our own indigenous structures and have suppressed our indigenous structures, many times dismantling them and broken them and scattered them. And if we're going to go forward in the future, we have to revisit our indigenous governing structures with our chiefs and our queen mothers and our councils of elders and our rites of passage and our secret societies for men and for women, and structure our countries the way we want Africa to look, the way Africa want Africans to be an African Africa, not an American Africa, not a British Africa, not a French, German, or Italian Africa, but an African Africa. We have our own notion of governance. We have our own notion of how to structure society. We have our own notion on how to educate society. Yet most of our universities, if you walk in them, they're teaching the same thing they're teaching in Europe and America. Mm-hmm. Ridiculous. So we're just creating white people in blackface over and over to become the middle class, the upper class, and the ruling elite. And if you are using a white framework, which is a framework, a European framework, which is designed to marginalize the African, to disrespect the African institution, to disrupt the African cultural norms, whether you're black or white, you're going to do the same thing. I think the closest system where we see some of it working is in Ghana. Ghana have the modern European nation state so-called democratic structure, but it kept intact the indigenous leadership structure, and it has a relationship, and it gives them constitutional partnership to a great degree. I think Nigeria was trying the same thing, but it don't seem to have been working there. But Ghana is at least a model and attempt at trying to create a fusion between the modern nation state and the indigenous governance structure from the village level up. And until we decide to restore our sacred science system, I don't want to call it religious system, I don't even want to call it cultural system. We can call it our culture system of our sacred science, where we determine how we form the human mind, where we determine what the human personality should be, where our socialization process, that's where you get your values, your interests, and your principles, emanates from an African indigenous structure and not from a European university. And until we do that, we're going to be in trouble.
That is a very important topic that you're saying, particularly this model of Ghana. We had a conversation on it 2 days ago, the Uganda and the Ghana model, particularly after the elections. We noticed that the process was it's going on. Even the opposition in Ghana is still not satisfied, but they taking a very subtle, without oppressions and lives and all these military actions to go through it. Who brokered that? Is it a combination between modern and tradition? How, from your opinion, did that happen in such a clean way?
Well, I know what happened, but I'll do it without calling the name of the principals. You know who one of the main principals were.
Yes.
It was the indigenous leadership and the religious leadership working with the elected leadership that brought the calm to Ghana. We know former President Mahama went to the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court ruled against the NDC party. And that's that. We have to accept the outcome. But the peace that allowed them not to be hostile was a series of meetings that was held a few weeks ago with the indigenous leadership, the religious leadership, and the elected leadership. And I think it worked very well. And I see the transition moving forward very positively in Ghana. We know there are outside players in Ghana, like the Oppenheimer Group out of South Africa, the American government, the AFRICOM, and Britain would sorely like to make Ghana its cash cow colony again. So they're all up in there with their MI5 or MI6, whatever they call themselves. But I think the people of Ghana have spoken for themselves with great dignity. I think the people of Ghana, because the elders were willing to sit down with their indigenous counseling and their spiritual counseling and the political parties and say, this is how we go forward with our nation. You know, and it seems to be working.
Wow. I mean, this is the beginning of a hope. When I say a hope, like, I mean, we see Ghana is something. Ghana is really coming, and that's why I'm so proud to be F4, the F4 of Ghana. And yes, Ghana is coming to really some critical things that maybe when the other African nations would be orienting. I mean, we're not saying that quote unquote 101, but at least it's a model that we can actually replicate. But then if we look at the orders, like what is currently, when the spirituality is broken into traditions, like in Nigeria, that could be critical, isn't it?
It could be, unless there's a force that can sit the three elements together, which is an Igbo predominantly Christian element, a Yoruba predominantly Yoruba indigenous element, and the Fulani Hausa predominantly Islamic element. If we can work, even in the Islamic area, we have an indigenous Islamic structure That's very different from the Saudi model or the Pakistani model or the Indonesian model. And so we need to give it more credibility, you see. We have the indigenous Yoruba structure with its kingship and its queen mother craft in place. And the same thing in the Igbo sector. So we have to stop marginalizing the indigenous structure and give it full partnership in the governance of the nation. We have to look at African culture as being the supreme culture, the superior culture. Maybe, yes, everybody borrows from other cultures. And there may be things of other cultures that work well, and we can integrate them and use them. But the supreme culture should be the indigenous culture of Africa. The superior culture must be the indigenous culture of Africa if we are to survive. Let me say, even in Museveni, who's an elder who had just undergone election in Uganda, and the West had all their observers, but they can't figure out why did 90% of the people vote for him. Even if he stole some of that, you still got the majority of the people voting for him. The question is, what are they voting for? They're voting for the opportunities that he's created in that nation. You see? We look at the poverty that the West imposed on us. You steal $2 trillion of our money, and you give us $100 million. Oh, we've given you aid. We just aid you with $2 trillion. Who's giving the aid to whom? We're aiding the West. They're not aiding us with anything. They have nothing to aid us with. They won't even share their technology intelligently with us, you know? So when I look at Museveni, and I also know that in Uganda, you have indigenous structure. You have the Bukongo kingdom, you know? You have the Ntoro kingdom, and you have two other major kingdoms there that are participants in the governance process, especially at the local level. They may not have the same fusion as Ghana has, but it's there and it's involved, you know. And most people don't even know there's a Bukongo kingdom and an Ntoro kingdom and so forth, and that they have their kings and they have their queens and they have their indigenous structure still in place in Uganda, because we're only focusing on the Western church and the Eastern mosque and their university technocrats. And we're not paying attention to what our ancestors left for us to guide ourselves with.
That is deep. That is deep because particularly this situation in Uganda, and the idea that when we are stuck in a situation like the current, we hear the young leader aspirant Bobby Wine is currently on the house arrest for some time now, and like the issue you're talking about, isn't it actually that we, instead of carrying our heads and say, please America come and help us, or this, that we look back to these kingdoms for a mediator and stuff like that. Now who do we ask for help that would be our expert, isn't it?
We would turn to our indigenous leaders and our councils of elders that are in all of our countries. We may marginalize them, but we have never been able to dismantle them, thank God. And if they think America can give them any great help, they need to talk to the African American. They need to talk to the Black American. We'll tell them how friendly America has been to Africa. Yes, there have been some individuals and some elements, but America has been one of the worst enemy Africa has ever had over the last couple of 100 years. When you look at the corporations that's milking the Congo, look at the Congo, a big, beautiful, wealthy Congo. Why are we suffering with the greatest wealth on the planet Earth? Why don't we have all of the medical facilities we need, educational facilities that need, the road structure we need? Excuse me. Because the corporate people from the West, especially America, they've got the freeways going from the mines to the ports or from the mines to the airport, just robbing us blind. In the last 5 years, how many millions of our women have been brutally raped and killed in the Congo? They don't even carry it on their news station.
Mm-hmm.
Or they'll talk about, oh, there's Ebola in the Congo, and we found 2 cases of Ebola. You murdered 100,000 of my women last year. You raped 500,000 of my women last year. You've ripped up my land and poisoned it, and you haven't replaced the forest. You've dug deep holes, and you've destroyed my environment. You've taken money, and you paid this group and that group to fight so that you can control the gold or the cobalt or the coltan or the bauxite in the area you want to steal from. Let's call a spade a spade. Tell the truth. Stop lying to ourselves. We have no friends. We may build some alliances with those who need what we've got, but we have no friends. Africa have no friends. The Chinese are not our friends. The Saudis are not our friends. The Indians are not our friends. The Pakistanis, they're not our friends. That's why every time I'm on the show, I tell you, history will erase the mystery. Mm-hmm. If we know our history, we know who our friends are, and we know who our enemies are. And that's why they block us. Imagine, most African schools don't teach African history. Most African universities don't teach African history. How the hell are you going to raise an individual in a culture and a state when you demean the culture of that people and you marginalize or don't at all inform them of their history? And you allow them, it's like allowing the woman who was raped to marry the rapist, not realizing that the rapist is what it is. Mm-hmm. Then one day she wakes up and realizes, this is the one that raped me, but this is also the one I'm bearing children for as a wife. What do? I killed him. I killed him. That's what you do to the rapist. You kill him. Now, that's not literally the way you kill him, is to become you, to find out what is your interest. How do you orient your young people so that you come up with your master plan for rebuilding the African society that you're a part of? Yes, borrow whatever tools from anybody in the world. I think it was Mao Zedong himself who said, it was a book he wrote called The 9 Essays on War. He said, study war, study Revolutionary War, study wars of freedom. Learn from all the people in their wars and take only what you need to fight your war. You can borrow tools from anyone, but the intent must be to build an Africa for the Africans, of the Africans, by the Africans. Anything short of that, you're going to lose. Africans should not be looking how to cross a desert, dying in Libya, being enslaved in Libya, dying in the Mediterranean just to get a job to feed themselves when we're the richest continent in the world. And those who are able to get a degree, the first thing they want to do is get a visa to Britain, London, Italy, or America and abandon their people just for survival. Africans abroad should be packing their bags, trying to run back home as fast as they can, because it is the only real future they got. As an African person, if you want to be a German, you can go and say, Guten Mein Herr, or whatever you say to say hello or greeting. If you want to be French, you can go and say, Je suis français. But the French know you're not Je suis français. The Germans don't care how well you speak German. They know you're not German. And Germany is not for you. Mm-hmm. You can live there and help enrich them, but you will never run it or own it. We can run Africa. We can own Africa. It is ours. It is the bequeathal from our ancestors. Mm-hmm. We need to learn to respect ourselves. And you can't respect yourself if you don't respect your ancestry. You can't respect yourself if you don't respect your culture. You're going to tell me we Africans have been on the planet for millions of years, and we had to wait for some white people to come and some Arab people to come and to bring us a religion that's 2021 years old? I mean, we sat here for millions of years and God cared nothing about us. We knew nothing about God. Come on, let's stop playing. Let's stand up Let's look in the mirror and see who we really are. Then take responsibility for making Africa better than she's ever been. We had the great Kemetic civilization, the great Nubian civilization, the great Kama civilization, the great Mali civilization, the great Songhai civilization, the great Ghana civilization, the great, we had more. We had the great Zimbabwe civilization. We had the other great civilization of the South. We had the great Swahili states. This is before Europeans knew how to wear a pair of pants. And now we can't even run a civic committee in a village? No. Let's return to the way of our ancestors. Let's study our history. Let's study our culture. Culture is how you get your value, interests, and principles. Culture informs everything in your life. Culture involves everything that you do and that happens to you in your life. So let's see how ours work. We've tried the enemies. We're living in poverty everywhere in the world. Here in the United States, we spend $1 trillion a year. Okay, we're about 60 million people, Africans. And yet we have people living in poverty. Doesn't make any sense. Ghana has some of the biggest gold mines in the world, bauxite mines, manganese, cocoa. Why is there any poverty in Ghana? Nigeria is one of the richest country in West Africa. Why is there poverty? Why are we fighting each other? Why am I carrying a Russian AKA shooting at my brother, robbing him side the road? We don't even make guns. Why am I wearing the camouflage uniform of the murderers of my mother and father to identify me and my manhood? Such an insult to the human spirit, to the human character. Let's be in the theater, if you're on the stage. I used to manage the theater when I was at the university for 16 years. And when the actor gets in trouble and can't remember her lines or his lines, they cut off all the lights and it's called go to black. Go to black and get it together. Then come back on the stage. Africans need to go to black. Go back to black. Go back to our ancestors. Let's study their system. Maybe all of the elements won't work today, but let's extract those elements that will. Let's study our culture. Why did we have rites of passage for our women? Why did we have rites of passage for our men? What did those institutions do? Will they work to make us a better people today than the Western system have made us? Where we abuse each other and call it love? Some of the things just in our daily lives are ridiculous because the model we have to form ourselves as a human being is the model of the people who came to destroy us as human beings. How could that work? Maybe I'm saying too much.
No. Hey, you're just on point. You're just on point. Just keep going. That's the one of the biggest gift that we have is you. All of you, these colors that have put. And I begin to think of the Pan-African Daily TV model, the model that works for Africa, and it is our responsibility to make this media the biggest and the most resourceful media. And I don't really bother too much about some other things, but culture and history has to determine how we're going to run our narratives and the model and even refurbish the Africa. What's your opinion on that?
Well, what I'm going to do, I'm going to find a message a friend sent to me, and it was from the mouth of our great elder and scholar, Sheikh Anta Diop. And here's what Sheikh had to say. The great Sheikh Anta Diop, who wrote Cultural Unity of Africa, Black Africa, who wrote Civilization or Barbarism and multiple other books. He was out of Senegal. He said, the negation of history and intellectual accomplishments of Black Africans was cultural, mental murder, which proceeded and paved the way for their genocide here and there in the world. Let me read that again. This is Cheikh Anta Diop, one of the greatest scholars Africa has produced in this century. He said the negation of the history and intellectual accomplishments of Black Africa was cultural mental murder, which proceeded and paved the way for their genocide here and there in the world. I think that tells it all. And for those who don't know who Cheikh Anta Diop was, please read his book, Civilization or Barbarism, or the Cultural Unity of Black Africa.
Mm-hmm.
And to tell a lot of people know, I'm born in America, but we didn't leave Africa in Africa when we got on the ships, people. I mean, it's like today, say Queen Tata decide, oh, I'm going to Florida and live for a while. She will still be a Cameroonian woman from Africa. So I've just been here a little longer. I'm the same African. I speak differently because I've been in the enemy's tongue for a couple of centuries. But I didn't leave Africa there. I am Africa. It went with me wherever I went. And most of my great teachers, was from that continent, out of Nigeria. I had, oh goodness, my great father, he wrote the book, The History of the Yoruba Nation, Akinjobin, or I must be getting old. Baba Katemi, Professor Katemi out of Kenya. About 50% of my university's professors that formed this mind came from the continent of Africa and taught in the universities here, but they didn't lose Africa. Mm-hmm. And most of them went back home. Mm-hmm. Brother Professor Amoda, but he's back home now for many years. So many of us who you hear speaking, we were taught by professors from that continent in the last 40, 50 years. Mm-hmm. And we've traveled. I've been traveling to Africa for 40 something years. I own a business on the continent. I have land on the continent. Mm-hmm. I have adopted children on the continent who are my children in essence. So when you hear me talking, I'm not just some African-American intellectual guy that wants to say some stuff. Because I want all of my children. I would like to see all my grandchildren pack their bags, pack their suitcase. I got 23 of them. Go home. Leave this place. I know most won't. Most of mine probably will eventually. And many others. And take whatever mind we've got and whatever strength we got and help to build Africa for the Africans, by the Africans, in the way Africans want their nations to be. Mm-hmm. And we can't do that if we reject our ancestors. We can't do that if we reject indigenous institutions. We can't do that if we reject and vilify African culture and African spiritual systems. No people can survive doing that. And Anta Diop has told us clearly that is murder, mentally and culturally.
Yeah. I mean, I'm just deep. I'm just into it, and we are seeing even the role of the woman, of the African warriors and the goddess and the queens. If we look into this patriarchy and this modern Western system, it has diluted a lot and put the face of the African woman always in the background, and even the ideas of women being marginalized is always just the term. In our Africanness and our culture, does it play that role? Or women, no matter what we build, our homes, to our communities, to our states, and being everywhere, does that make us really marginalized? Or does the power and the strength?
The Western societies is an anti-woman society. And it goes back to their founding in Greece and Rome. Even Aristotle, one of their great scholars, said of Africa, the African people who lived in Egypt before the invasion of the Arabs and the Tartars and the Turks and the Kurds, who now call themselves Egyptians, but they're all invaders and imperialists, children of imperialism. When they first came, Egypt was as black as your hair. Okay. And it's in all the museums to see. How you going to take a black mummy and pretend, oh, he's black because something happened to him on the way? They're so stupid. It's not to be believed. But let me get serious. Aristotle said, I don't understand the Africans. The men must be very weak because the women, the home is the woman's castle. She runs it. She makes all the rules to govern it. In the West, it is said that the household is the man's castle. That's not true in Africa. It shouldn't be. But it's beyond just controlling the house. But the house is enough because it's the foundation of the society. It's where you produce what goes forward in society. But the woman has the authority in Africa, and she gives that power to the man to run society. And so if you go, let's take the Ghana model, the Ashanti model, the Santa Hene, the king of kings of the Ashanti nation. He can't be the son of the king. But it's the queen mothers of the community that choose what man is going to be the king in the Ashanti nation, not the men. They pass this over to them to do the rituals and make the decisions around this and that. But they only get what the woman passed to them to be their leaders because she suckled them on his breasts. She nurtured him and grew him. She know what character is in that child when he becomes a man. No man knows that. So the king of kings, and this is true in most African nations I've studied, is chosen by the women, the queen mothers of the nation, and presented to the council of men to groom and give him his duties as the king. That's why if we don't study our history, if we don't study our culture, if we don't get serious about respecting our ancestors, don't pour libations that's meaningless. Don't tell me those of us who have become Christians or Muslims says, oh, stay away from this ancestor thing. Somebody need to tell you, everybody in the Bible is dead. They're all ancestors. Everybody in the Quran is dead. Everybody in the Torah is dead. You call their name every day. You pray to them every day. And then you tell me I should not pour to my libation, to my ancestors? What are you saying? That's so hypocritical. Everybody mentioned in those books are all dead. They're ancestors. Okay? I hope that's clear enough. You know?
That's too clear. That's even too clear enough. There is also this thought that we're talking about poverty mindset. You already mentioned it a little bit. This poverty-driven Africa, this weak-driven Africa, this woman that slave Africans. I mean, this poverty mindset is not the reality. We know it, right?
The African woman is the most desired creature on the planet Earth.
No.
All women from around the world, they even created something called the bosom just to show that they had some stereospecial, which means to be behind, to imitate you, you know. So they wear makeup to give tone and darkness to their skin, or they spend billions to lay in the sun and turn your color. And then they take that's just the aesthetic stuff. They take your institutions. Let me just be clear, if you don't mind, and I don't care who don't like. Even the Pope in 2009, he was in Cameroon, and he was telling the Cameroonians, that of the 10 people who wrote the original theological documents of the church, 7 was Africans. Okay? So they stole your spiritual literature, recast it in their cultural norms, then sold it back to you in a diluted form. Islam, you know that the Prophet Muhammad said, I come not to bring a new religion, but to restore that which was here in the beginning. Africa was the beginning. For those who say they got the Torah, and I'm the Jew, and I'm the Hebrew, and then you have your Genesis story. Well, let me give you my Genesis story that's 25,000 years older than yours from the pyramid text. When Amun said, I bring myself into being, I cause existence to exist so that existing might exist. And when I realized that I, God Supreme, was in existence, my woman was standing at my side as my aunt, truth, justice, righteousness, harmony, balance, and reciprocity. She didn't come from my rib. When God realized himself being himself, God realized the Black woman was at his side. That's our literature. And then he said, I spat out Shu and I coughed up Tefnut, the moisture in the air that created what we call the universe and the skies. And they created Geb and Nut, the immediate atmosphere and the earth. And they created Asar and a Set, not Adam and Eve, Asar and a Set, but we 25,000 years older than you. And Asar and a Set. First, Aset, the Black woman, come into being and give birth to the man that would be her husband, Asar. That woman holding the child in her arms in the Madonna pose, 25, 30,000 years before Christianity, she gave birth to her partner. As God gave birth to itself as a Black woman. If you don't like it, prove theologically or scientifically that I'm wrong. The first human being was a Black woman because God decided I will manifest as that Black woman, and then I will give birth to the rest of the world. We have a theology. We have a literature that's older than any body of literature anywhere in the world. So you steal my literature and hide it in your museum, hide it in your library and tell me, oh, I'm ignorant. I'm this, I'm that. Yet you based your civilization on me. Your nations is run by Freemasons. I'm a Freemason, tutored under you. Prince Hall Lodge 37, the Grand Lodge of the state of New York. And I can tell you all of it comes out of Africa. I do a 2-hour lecture, Freemasonry's Africa's Black Child. So listen to me, Black people. Your culture is the mother of the world. Do not accept the counterfeit, the plagiarized, the profane ignorance being passed off as culture in the world. Turn to your mothers and your fathers. Turn to the way of your ancestors. Study Chinwezu. Read his book. Study Nana Kwabena Nketia on culture and governance in Africa. Study Sheikh Anta Diop, the cultural unity of Africa. Learn about how you already have the system you're dreaming of. Let his messy system that have led to nothing but death all over Africa, let it go. We can't do it overnight, of course, I understand that, but begin to transform into a system that reflects the humanity of Africa. You know, we are the human being. We are beyond the human being. Because look in all of our language, and you tell me if I'm wrong. Let's just take one of the Bantu streams, Mantu, Kentu, Bentu, and Entu. Person, people, place, and thing. In any African language, where you look at person, people, place, and thing, the one thing you will find, either the prefix or the suffix is their word for God. In Bantu, they made us want to hate that word, but the Entu means God, our word for God. Bantu means people. We are God's people. We said that of ourselves. If we go to Ghana again and look at the airway, it says Sogbe Lisa. Sogbe Lisa is the totality of creation itself. And in Sogbe Lisa, I was a voodoo Gadzi, the essence of the divine and the human. Voodoo Daha, the essence of the divine in nature. That's how we saw everything. We said nothing that didn't have God as its main element. Study our culture. In the Yoruba, somebody said, what are you striving for? They said, oh, God is Oludumare. But Yoruba scholars have said Oludumare is a feminine, not a masculine phenomenon. So you ready to say God is a feminine phenomenon? Because she's the only one that can produce and reproduce life form. Study our culture. Get a different view of the world. Get a different feel of who you are. Then you won't look down on your ancestors. You won't go to Latte or Ife or the villages in Togo and laugh and just pull out your camera when you see someone dancing as the ancestor and the seemingly just bush spinning. You will understand the metaphor. You will understand the folklore. You will understand the energy that forms in the human mind from the very sound of our language. The very sound of our language. Our language is the ship that contains the essence of our culture. We haven't lost anything. We just need to learn ourselves, relearn ourselves, and teach our young. There should be an African language spoken as the first language of every one of the 54 nations. Everybody says, oh, there's so many languages, we got to fight. There are many European languages, you didn't have to fight to pick one of those. So why not pick one of ours? Kiswahili is the most widely spoken on the continent of Africa. It shouldn't be too difficult to negotiate that arrangement. And if we want to speak English, fine, but let it be a second language. Let French be a second language. Let an African language be the first language that's spoken in all of the states of the continent. Language is one of the most important parts of culture because it contains the meaning of your culture. Say to me, you speak in your Cameroon language. Say to me, I love you. No, say it. I want to make a point. Good. Does that sound like I love you? That contains more elements. It has more perspective. It gives more meaning and understanding to the implication of that arrangement we call love. If you know your language, then when you say it, something different happens in your mind than when you use an enemy's language to say it. Just our drums. Just look at our drums. Everywhere in Africa, there's drums. But there's drums and drums. And there's drumming and drumming. You know? And there's some good books. I like to show books, right? And I've got 4 right here. They're just sitting on my shelf. When we think of our music, which is one of the big conveyors of our culture, there's something called the Journal of the Musical Arts in Africa. And this is volume 1. And I think it was done in South Africa, the Journal of the Musical Arts in Africa. You need to read this book, or the Musical Arts in Africa, Theory, Practice, and Education. We need to study this book. Yes, there's literature on our music and our practice and our drumming. Or you might want to look at Learning the Music Arts in Contemporary Africa by Mickey Nzivi, who out of Nigeria. And he has volume 1 and volume 2. And so, and you can go on and on and on. Our literature's there, but it's being marginalized. It's not being used in the university. It's not being used in the high school. And our children are not learning about the great art. Or if you want to really get into drums, by our brother who wrote the Akan Goldweight out of Ivory Coast, and he wrote near Ngora Bura. He wrote a book called Drumology. It's in French. It will blow your mind. You will never look at the drums the same ever again. Or go to Ghana and go to the Achim community and see a ceremony where the king is sitting and his linguist is at his side. And they're not speaking the language. The drum is speaking the language. I whispered to my linguist, please tell the Imahini I would love to have a word with him. Then he will turn to the drums, and the linguist on the drum will take my words and translate it into drum language, which is heard by the linguist of the king, who will then whisper to the king what I've had to say.
Wow. What? No. I'm going. I'm off here. Done with it.
Because we miss what we've got. Africa's got everything she needs. We don't need nothing from the outside. We've got everything. We've got everything. And you see the same in other cultures, where someone will have this big horn of the cow or one of the big horned animals, and can blow the language on the horn, so that the principal is hearing. I'm just hearing a horn because I'm an African American. I'm stupid. I don't know nothing about the culture. But the person sitting in the seat of power hears a conversation in the language of our ancestors and understand from the horn what I have told the horn blower to say to him. Mm-hmm. You want to really get into our culture? You see a priest. I sent you a piece the other day from Latte, the Asurgibi festival in Ghana.
Correct, I have it.
Okay. Mm-hmm. And when we see the priests dancing to Asurgibi, one is, they're just out there dancing. They learned those dance. Energy and matter can neither be destroyed. Science have proven that. So that means the energy of every ancestor that ever lived still lives with us. But how do we make connections to them? That's what our rituals are about. Give me an army of ancestors. If we wake them up again and let them march with us as our army, no one can defeat Africa. If we leave them asleep because we don't know how to call their spirit, we don't know how to call their names. And I know some of my Western religious brothers and sisters may have issues with this, but you show me where your praying has worked. You tell me all this praying we're doing in all them churches in Africa, and we're still in the situation we're in. Malcolm said, if they ain't did you know better by now, you need to get rid of it anyway. And I love Malcolm X because he was a very intelligent young man, very practical. He said, make it plain, make it simple. If you want to do some ceremony in some other person's religion to show respect for them, fine. But if you're going to forget your own mother and father, in deference to their mother and father, you've lost your way. And you will never win that game. You can make money. And you can go in his profane lifestyles. I need 10 cars. I need 5 houses. I need da-da-da-da-da-da. And you will die and somebody will squander it the way they want. But if you want what the Africans offer, what the Yoruba call Iwapile, if you want Iwapile, if you want the gentle character, or what the Igbo call Omaneli, harmony and balance within and without, or what the ancient blacks in Kemet call Ma'at, truth, justice, righteousness, harmony, balance, and reciprocity in your character, then you better look towards the African sacred science, the African culture, because there is where it lies and no place else. And that philosophical undergirding will allow you to structure the political institutions that reflect that philosophical undergirding of harmony and balance, of communal, collective, and cooperative. We don't need Marx or Lenin. We are a communal, a collective, and a cooperative people by nature. All of our indigenous structures reflect that. As we modernize it to meet the technocratic age of today, then let us do that. Let us decide what we leave out and what we bring in. If we have to borrow from others, why not? They borrowed from us. You know, I said it the last time I was on the show. They went to Mars and they had a Mars rover. Did they tell the world it was built by a Malian man? You know, they got the internet. Did they tell the world one of the partners of building the internet was a Nigerian man? You know, they got the cell phone. Did they tell you the cell phone is created by a Black American? And we can go on and on and on. So we've been in their world, giving them our minds, giving them our bodies, giving them our spirit. And all they've given us back is to show us how to murder the essence of our ancestors in our very souls, show us how to marginalize and laugh at our own culture. Now, everybody hasn't done this. African culture is alive and well all over Africa. African culture is alive and well in every village, every town, every city. But we've got to make it the center post. It's got to come center stage. It's got to be the superior element in our socialization process. And anything else has to be secondary. It has to be in every book, in every school, taught to every child from kindergarten through university. We have to restore our rites of passage system for our women and our rites of passage system for our men.
What is that?
That
rite of passage. What is that?
As we move through time, we move through age, and we're at the level where we have to take on different responsibilities.
Mm-hmm.
So when you become a teenager, you take on different responsibilities in the household. When you become a young adult, you take on different responsibilities. When you become a junior elder, you take on different responsibilities. When you become an elder, you take on different responsibilities in society. At each of those juncture, there are ceremonies and rituals and teachings that let us know how to take on that next stage and be responsible for it. Mm-hmm. And we call those stage rites of passage. Today, we do the one where we go from teenager to adult, which usually happened at 16. And a lot of people call it the Sweet 16 because we wanted to deal with the Western notion of Sweet 16. But rites of passage is to prepare the man and the woman for adulthood, and then for eldership, and then for ancestorship. All of those stages have ceremonies that we go through, have rituals that inform and instruct us on what our behavior should be. What are the principles of our culture? What are the principles of character building? What are the essence of how our society should run? They must be embedded in our character as a people, embedded in our language, embedded in our dance, embedded in our songs, embedded in our theater craft, embedded in the designs on our clothing. We have clothing with beautiful designs, but how many of us can read them? We brought the Adinkra symbols down in Ghana. How many of us can read them and know the metaphor behind each one? We see the different beautiful kente cloth. How many of us can read them? It's a language system in textile. Even the dress you're wearing there now. What is that design all about? Where does it come out of history? What is it saying in our culture when I look at you? Even the hairstyle. Now we just throw in some extensions from the Asians and make them long so we can flip them like the white woman does and look foolish. But there was a time when a man could walk into a village and from the braiding style on the hair, I know that this woman is a virgin. I know that this woman is married. I know that this woman is divorced. I know that this woman is a widow, just from the hairstyle. That's how culture should speak to you. Otherwise, you're ignorant. Let's read there before we leave this point. Just let me read this one more time, because this is too important. The negation of the history and intellectual accomplishments of Black Africans was cultural mental murder, which preceded and paved the way for their genocide here and there in the world. If you love African scholarship, you gotta love Cheikh Anta Diop. Read his Civilization and Barbarism. Read his Cultural Unity of Black Africa. You know, the man was a scholar beyond scholar. You know, he had the only carbon dating laboratory in Africa owned and run by a Black person. He was a physicist as well as a historian. You know, so, and we have many Cheikh Anta Diop, men and women all over Africa. We don't even know their names. The Europeans give them awards and move them away to their places and let them teach in their universities, and we don't even know they exist. So the struggle for culture is really the education system of a people that ties them to their past, that ties them to their ancestry, that bind them to their ethnicity. That's what culture does. Culture determines what kind of political system you're going to have, because the political system must reflect the elements of culture that have been passed down by the ancestors for us to use.
You mentioned the award, and this is very pertinent, Prof, because you see even very prominent stars, you know, that even great artists, I'm talking even about queens, musicians, but when they get really the global stage, they get an award to be a United Nations ambassador for poverty and women and this and this. Why do they not get an award for representing the African culture with pride and giving it back to create schools for music and stuff? Like, you know, why must it always be an award that would go to talk about poverty, talk about, and nothing even doesn't change?
What those things are about is how to extract and take those people away from their people. So you give them money, you give them awards, you give them positions in your university and your international organization to keep them from being cultural leaders of their own communities. One of the greatest ones we had in modern time was Fela Kuti. You know,
Fela, yeah.
We don't. How many people think about Fela? People think, when you think about in the West, when they show Fela, all they want to show is people smoking ganja and partying. Fela was politically, the man was arrested more often than me. You know, I mean, this man took a political stance against tyranny that he saw growing up in his nation. He saw the tyranny creeping into the government from the West. He saw the poison of Western culture. And so he put his life on the line to project Nigerian and African culture to the world. The same thing with Bob Marley. Bob Marley could have made plenty of money and been fine, and they wouldn't have had to poison him with the cancer. But he decided that I'm going to push the culture of my people, the value of my people. I'm going to raise the contradiction of their conditions and suggest to them how they get out of it. Before they shot beautiful Peter Tosh, you know, Peter was talking about how we are all Africans are one and how we need to come together. No matter where we were an African. But Peter wasn't just singing a music. He had just bought a radio station in Jamaica. He was getting ready to launch his cultural propaganda, and they shot him down like a dog.
Hmm.
Patrice Lumumba wasn't coming as a tyrant. He came as a liberator, a young man. They killed him, chopped his body up, threw it in acid, and disappeared. But like someone said, I think Nana and Ketsia the other day, Patrice Lumumba lives in me. Patrice Lumumba lives in you. Wake up to Patrice Lumumba in you. Immanuel Cabral, who led the PIGC in Guinea-Bissau in the revolution against the Portuguese, he made it very clear. You can fight all the revolution you want, but if you don't include the culture of the people, you would have lost the very war you won. He said it a little differently. Tell no lies, claim no easy victory. And they murdered him 2 weeks before he was to come before the United Nations to declare the independence from Portugal of his people. And if we know history, we can go time and time again and say, well, why are these people doing this? Who are these people that are doing this? I'm in their capital, living, pretending I'm them, trying to be like them, and they murdered my mother and my father and burnt my house and stole my artifacts and filled their museums and filled their treasury. And I'm coming over here begging at their feet, thinking I'm looking up to something omnipotent, omnipresent, omnipotent. I'm looking up to a murderer, a robber, you name it. Now let's be clear. Let's be clear. Africa for the Africans at home and abroad and wherever the Africans live, build your African there. Build your Africa. Interconnected. That's what Pan-Africanism is all about. There's nearly 3 billion of us on this planet very soon. We will outnumber everybody. But will we allow the minority to keep us in poverty because they blind us to our culture, our history, and our past? Because they blind us to our sacred science and spiritual system and tell us to follow theirs and stay in poverty and pray to their God and hope that one day they figure out, oh yeah, I'll get to y'all later, Africans. Let's do what our ancestors said. So, listen, God is the totality of creation. Voodoo Daha, Voodoo Gansi, and I'm an expression of an aspect of the essence of that divine. I'm not inferior to anybody or nothing, anywhere, and never have been. And I have a way. My ancestors had a way. Maybe we didn't suspect the criminality that came on us called colonialism and the Berlin Conference and slavery. But we know it now if we study history. And it will never catch us in that situation ever again. Because we will raise the light of Africa for the Africans, the way the Africans wanted it presented to the world. You know, once I made a speech and I was criticizing it, oh, my friends all over the world was upset. But you know, I told the truth. You know, I told the truth about our condition, just like I tell the truth about the African American condition, with his backward self, white man wannabe, while his people suffer and languish in the prisons of America. And his children graduate from school and can't read, can't get jobs. And we're busy driving our Mercedes and living in our big houses and talking on television like we got something going on. Well, in Africa, if you didn't eat, then I can't eat. And if I eat, then you should eat. That's our culture. I can't tell you, oh, I got mine, so you go get yours. And that has become the culture of Black America. I made it, so you go and you make it. No. If you can't eat, then I can't eat. And if I'm eating, then you must also eat. That's our culture. That's the value out of our culture. But let's come back to more contemporary situation. We've got a situation that just happened in Ghana. We saw an election happen. We saw that they handled it. And they brought in the traditional and cultural element. They brought in the spiritual element. They brought in the political element. We just had an election in Uganda. And I saw a lady, Iranian lady or somebody, news lady, interviewing President Museveni. And he said, I've given my people the things and the tools they need. You see, if America would stop putting sanctions on our nations like they did to Zimbabwe, how do you tell me ZANU-PF and the other liberation force would rid their country of Ian Smith and the white terrorists who had murdered them for years? And then you come with your guns from Britain and America and your intelligence that if you kill those people who have been killing you, we will kill you. And so we said, okay, we'll come to you and we'll sit at Lancaster House and we'll make an agreement that in 10 years, you come and take your people out of my country. And if you want to pay them, you pay them, but we want our land back. But the 10 years come and the Americans and the British reneged on their deal as they always do. Then the 15 years came and it was almost 20 years. And the people of Zimbabwe said, we want our land back. We won the war. We could have slaughtered you. We didn't do that. We even gave you 10% of the parliament when you were only 1% of the population. And still, you want to hold on to our land. And when he made the attempt to get the land, Black people all over the world sided with the whites and went against Mugabe and ZANU-PF and financed those criminal minds to run against him and try to profane him and put sanction on that nation and threw it into poverty simply because the nation would no longer submit to their slavery. Anyway, study history. It will erase the Europeans' mystery. Study history, and it will erase the Europeans' mystery. History will give you your memory back. When you get your memory back, you can begin to imagine your future again, the way you want it to be. That's enough talking for me, Miss Susan Tata. I know you must have other things.
It's not a talk. It's not enough of talking. It's enough of not enough of wisdom and the mastery of what we know. Yes, as usual, dear viewers and listeners, it is not just talking or doing this. I've seen in the comments people are saying, yes, but we cannot. I want to read those books and we cannot buy those books. What I want to assure you is we are putting up all this, and you would have access to master classes by this able scholars and big shots, as I call
Let me say
them.
that. I don't want to hurt anybody's feelings. Like one brother says, the Ugandan election was an outrage. To whom? Would you prefer that the white LGBT community that has been trying to dominate and proselytize in our community all over the world, where even President Obama threatened the African governments, if you don't accept the LGBT communities in your countries, then we will cut off aid to you. Do you believe that the British intelligence and the American intelligence who finance so many of the opposition is a better deal? You better come and sit and have a conversation with me, because it tells me you know nothing about the history of Africa. I feel that Museveni should step aside and that the government should put a process in to transition and bring in a younger population with more imagination and ideas and technocracy. I do too, but I'm not willing to sell my soul back to the European imperialists to get that done. We'll figure another way to do it. So don't play. You better take a look at Africa. You better know what every single American, British, French, South African corporation is really doing in your country. You better understand why these movements, people want to force movements that's totally against African culture on us, and we're supposed to accept them. So what if we go to England and says, you must accept voodoo, and we want voodoo to be raised to the highest level in your country, and you must not put up anything in opposition to us. Next, they're going to come up with the Society of Murderers, and then we're supposed to accept the Society of Murderers? Well, we already do that. We call them our collaborators and friends. I think a lot could be done in Uganda and all African countries to get the governments right and to get the young people organized for governance. But if we just going to continue to let one white corporate or one white ethnic nation buy us out and we shift places, then don't be criticizing what's there, because you're not bringing anything better. You want something better? Build an indigenous movement based on indigenous concepts, ideas, and principles. Educate the young and have them rise up in the way they could, not slaughtering ourselves in the streets like the Europeans have done and would like to see us doing. Tell me about a bad election. We just had a bad election in America. How do you think Trump got in there? You think he didn't cheat? You think Obama didn't cheat to get in there? Please, what world are you living in? Study history. Extract yourself from the white man's mystery. Figure out how you're going to fix Africa in Africa using Africans and African elements. You want to exchange one group of imperialists for another group of imperialists? And because you got a younger face, that's supposed to mean you less of Museveni when he went in there, he was young. So what are you saying? I saw what happened in Zimbabwe, and I saw the position African nations took, and you ought to be ashamed of yourself. Every African nation should have rallied around Zimbabwe and said, we will not respect any sanctions. I did see Africa stand up strong when they came after Kenyatta and wanted to put him on trial in Geneva. How many white men have been on trial in Geneva for the crimes against humanity in Africa? How many? How many South African whites have gone to Geneva to face the crimes? How many Zimbabwean whites have gone to Geneva? How many Congolese whites have gone to Geneva? Stop playing. Yes, there need to be change in Uganda. Yes, there need to be change in almost every African nation. We saw Sankara slaughtered like a dog in Burkina Faso. Where were you? Cowards, where were you? You know? And when they got tired of using his killer, they threw him out. But the French are still in control. The little man you got running around from the World Bank in Cote d'Ivoire, he know he didn't win that election against Gbagbo. But where were you when the French army came in and the UN came in and the American intelligence and drove the legitimate leader out of Cote d'Ivoire and put their pimp in there? Where were you? You know, I'm not on anybody's side except Africa's side. Yes, we got issues. But we're not going to solve our issues by bringing in the filth of the West and worsen our condition. If the West is caught up in gender confusion, leave them there. That's not African culture. Why can't we have our culture? If they want to have theirs, I say, God bless them. I'm not going to come to England and tell them how to live, or to Germany, or to France, or to America, even though we built most of what is America. So why should they get the right to come in Africa and impose anti-African cultural behavior on us, to the tone of saying they're going to cut our money? Give me back only what you stole. You don't have to give me any aid. Just give me what you stole. No, we do better than that. Keep what you stole. Stop stealing. Leave the rest for me and my children and my grandchildren and my great children. But that's not going to happen, because we get so busy to figuring who's going to get in the government to steal next that we don't see who's stealing everything that the indigenous people of the continent should have. Nobody's stopping. I don't hear nobody naming any one of these corporations from America, from Britain, from France, from South Africa, from Saudi Arabia, the corporate raiders in Africa, working right now with all of their headquarters in every capital we have. You know? I don't hear nobody call their name anymore. You don't talk about Exxon or Shell or Mobil, you know. You don't talk about the Oppenheimer group. No, you're afraid of the white man. You're afraid of the European. You're afraid of his corporate structure and his intelligence apparatus. But you can slaughter one another to get into a government that can only work if they let it work. So what are you saying to me? Anyway, I may be too harsh. That doesn't include all of the continents, but it does include a large swath. Get mad with me if you want to. I am that I am. I'm a free man. I'm an African man. I don't owe nobody nothing but the divine itself. Anyway, that's being harsh. But history will erase the mystery. Most of the young politicians in Africa study, starting with the Berlin Conference, study the First World War. That thing that happened with the Duke of Austria that they call the First World War in Europe, that's not the First World War. The First World War was fought on the continent of Africa after the Berlin Conference. Every European army field their troops against our people. And all these little countries we have now is how they chopped us up and divided us up to rob us so that we could feed them. We built Paris, we built London, we built Zurich, we built Rome. We built them, we built New York off of what was stole out of Africa after the Berlin Conference. Go after those enemies, define them, because they're still there right now, doing the same thing they did after 1884. Go and study your great leaders who tried to stop them. Study Muhammad Ahmed of the Sudan. Study how he took on the British and the Arabs and the Turks. And they came in with 30,000 soldiers with their fancy Western rifles. And he sent them back home with 3,000. Oh, they killed him because one of us betrayed him and poisoned him. Study Tipitu and Abdallah. You know, study the great Zulu king, Bombata, in the Battle of Islamabad, where he whipped the British to such a degree it caused the fall of the Robespierre government. Find out who your ancestors were, and maybe you will approach changing governments in Africa in a different way. Yes, there need to be a lot of changes. I'll be the last one to say there isn't. And in Uganda and a lot of other places, there need to be a lot of changes. But you need to be careful. Don't go sticking your hand out to one imperialist to help get rid of one corrupt brother or sister. Because somebody should chop those hands off too. And if I was a spirit, I'd fly around and do it. I just think of myself in the sense that what all of us should be thinking, that we're just the divine having the human experience. African culture shows us how to wake up that divinity in ourselves. We want change. Let's change to be Africans, not to be more European marauders culturally, defaming and debasing African people and African institutions. And I don't really, let me tell everybody, I ain't looking for love from nobody. My ancestors love me. My divine love me. I'm not looking for love. I'm trying to say something. Change the direction. The young man in Uganda, if he's legitimate, work with him. Help him organize a legitimate movement that's not financed by the West. Now, not financed by people that are trying to hold on to the lands in Uganda that they have. You go to the Great Lakes of Uganda, all those hotels are owned by white people. You want to go to the forest and build a gorilla, all of the companies that's doing the tours are white people. You got a lot of stuff to change before you discuss some other things. You go to your university to bring someone like me in to speak, you'd have to beg. But to bring in some imperialist pimp, to come and tell you something about America and Britain and their philosophy and all that crap, you're celebrated. So don't play with me. I see you. So you should see me.
We're rising. We're rising, we're babies, we're learning. And yes, you are that African father that will whip us and say, now, you've touched fire and it's going to burn you. It's fact that we have to divorce with a lot of things, and we starting at the baby stage. Some truth really actually hurt, some uncomfortable. Um, we have to put the structures that would walk us in the right direction. Like you say, know your history. It will demystify everything. History is that part that we think we should focus on, knowing our great empires and uh, all this. We don't even know the inventors. Like you said, do we know that the cell phone was invented? And even the war in Congo, why does it keep going on and on and on? Because of the need for cobalt. What is that even? We proudly show our I6, I20, IDAS. And if we would only know how many women and children are slaughtered every day to be able for us to brand that and say, I'm more than you, probably that is most deepest truth that we Africans have to embrace, look at it in the face and say, yes, we have to build it. If not, we would play with words, turn around and just globalize everything. And we just
We have, Sister Susan, and our young people, we have all the brain power we need. And our scholarship, they have the techniques they need. What we have not done is turn to our own indigenous systems to look for new models of governance, to look for new models of industrial development, to look for new models to technologically moving forward. That is
correct.
going to be the key. And no philanthropic European, I don't know any who's truly honest in their philanthropy. Okay? I don't, there may be some, there's some good people in the world. I just don't know any. But I know Africa got everything she needs. We have the most brilliant minds ever conceived. And this generation is probably the most progressive. But trying to replicate Europe and Africa is not going to work when it comes to structure. Well, we'll use some of the toys and technocracy they've created because we've aided in all that creation ourselves. We live all over the world now. We live all over Europe. We work in every corporation in the world, Asia, Europe, America, everywhere. So I'm not saying reject technocracy or reject modernity. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying if we want to get out of the situation, we've got to look in the one basket we didn't look into, and that is our own indigeneity. We've got to look in one basket we didn't look into, and that's our own culture. We've got to look in one basket we didn't look into, and that's our own history. Let's open that basket and see if the elements we are looking for to rebuild and reconstruct our society, so they won't be a necessity for Museveni or Mugabe being there for that many years, or the next one, because we put a structure in place that will create an evolution that will be purely African in terms of governance and does not be predicated on some European intelligence apparatus or some European banking money to determine what our next government is going to be. Because all of it is just slavery. And as simple as that. And so it's up to us. We got everything we need. We got the brain power, we got the intellect, we got the skills, we got the training. And yes, we even have the money. You know, we have the money right now, like this, a show like this. Why isn't there 3 or 4 African satellites up there broadcasting this show? We've got the money. right on the continent, we've got the wealth in black hands, but not in black minds. Not with a black vision, an African vision. And that vision can only come from your ancestors. Like I said, for all of you who are Hebrews, Muslims, and Christian, everybody in your holy books are dead. They're ancestors. Call them and see if they're going to wake up and sit beside you. They're all dead. So just as you treat them with regards and respect and reverence, then let's treat our ancestors with regard, respect, and reverence. And let's study, just as you study those people who are dead, that some group who had conquered us gave to us, let's study our ancestors who gave for us, to try to find a way to reconstruct our world and rebuild the African world as an African world and not a modified European world. The European world is designed to exploit Africa, and anybody that utilizes it will exploit Africa, whether you're black, brown, or white. Now, it's as simple as that,
Okay. I just picked water, and I would like to give you also the possibility to take a short break. We would be back and open up and take some questions, a break after the break. And I have been seeing a lot of comments saying, oh, can we ask questions or can we make a comment? So we do that after this short break. 1 second, please. Take a deep breath, breathe out, and we'll be back. Watching the Pan-African Daily TV with Dr. Susan Tata. The Africa we want: unity, consciousness, our culture, our spirituality, our history. One Africa for Africans worldwide. Motherland's calling its diaspora home. Yeah, so I want to thank all our viewers, and I want to take some few calls. If you have a call, please call through our WhatsApp number +49 1578211 2379. I can guarantee you, from what we are going through and what we're experiencing, that we are gonna make it. We're making it already with all our great scholars here with us. Nothing can be above us. If we open up our minds and are willing to take this bitter truth, if we open up our minds and are willing to swallow these bitter pills about us, then I think we have been learning a lot, and we are still ready to learn. We had Dr. Oba yesterday. He said almost the same thing, and he was like, I am a warrior. And one thing he said, because he's mixed, that we are having a lot of these scholars in us, straight to the point, he said, black is a mindset. It's the black mind. If we don't own the black mind, we cannot talk about change. I'm picking out this few calls and we conclude and round up. Hello. Hello.
How are you doing?
Fine, thank you, brother. Welcome to the show. Yes.
Well, I'm missing you so much. Where did you go? You travel, you hiding somewhere or something?
Oh no, I've been here. Yeah, good. Yes, we are on culture and leadership, and you've been following up the conversation with Professor James Small. What is your question or your comment?
Yeah, it's my uncle, James Small. I just love him. I just love him so much, because I've been listening to him quietly and taking all the points. I'm not putting it on paper, but I'm putting it all in my brain, in my head. Because it's somebody that I have been following, not here, but a very long time. Through the
Happy Talks.
One, yeah, Hidden Color one, and many other before Hidden Color. So, someone that I follow, and I know whatever come out from his mouth, he is well informed, is well taught, well disciplined to tell us what we should do, and I appreciate that so much. And the fact that he was talking about drumming in Ghana, which I think he has mentioned this particular thought before, and I also alluded to it that I'm from that lineage where not me, I used to, but it's shame to say that I have forgotten so much of it. But my mother know how to interpret drumming, the talking drum, because that is where we're from, the royal lineage. But having said that, I always love all what he's saying. It's historical, because I find it difficult to see and understand why we have a very strong bond from the past.
I don't know. Excuse me. Excuse me. Your background is very noisy and interrupting. I really barely don't get you. Where can you tune up the set that you have in the background so that we can listen to you? Because there's just some noise interrupting. I don't know, Prof. If someone is also getting that impression like me. So let him fix it, and I will take his call. Hello.
Hello.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm Yemo calling from Morocco.
From Morocco. Go ahead, brother.
Yeah, so I've been following up the talk on culture and the future of Africa and everything. I think I like what is really happening, and I want to thank you first of all, Dr. Susan. That seems familiar. It looks very familiar because when we are in Ghana, in Accra, we have similar name, which is Tete. My father is called Tete the Odwe. I'm Yemodwe. He's called Tete Odwe. And sometimes it's a family name, sometimes it's a surname, sometimes it's a first name. But to my father, it's a first. It's called Tete, and you are called Tete. And a couple of years ago, I collaborated with a Cameroonian Love and Life. And Love and Life, if you look at this band, they were performing. We did a residency together here in Morocco, in Rabat. And then I was looking at what they were doing and looking at what my tribe was doing. There was a group in a band, a traditional group down in Accra called Wulome. If you look at the performance, the performance of Stage of Love and Life and the one in Ghana, they were similar, something very similar. The same drums, same way of dressing and everything. Like, there's something, there has to be something between these two tribes. One is in Ghana, and one is in Cameroon there. And these are the Ghana tribe from Accra. But I love it again when the professor mentioned Latte. Latte, I'm from Latte. I'm a native of Latte. I've never been to Latte. The last time I see my father, which last year, I visited Ghana, and he took me to Latte. When we're talking about how to secure a land, he took me there. So that's where I saw Latte. He's passed now. And then a lot of things, so I just to say I'm just following up. I love what is going on. But first of all, I'm a musician. And so I've been living out of Ghana for the past 25 years. I live in Senegal and I'm living in Morocco. And then my kind of music, it's not just music. Everybody likes music, and so you can do place like Ghana. So I've been migrating, traveling. Europe is not my option. I only visit Europe and come back to Morocco. And Morocco is not also an option because it's a place to play conscious music. So the music is more a kind of stock, but the music is changing the scene in Ghana today because the last album was recorded in Kumasi, which would change the way of musicians doing their thing, the way they are now. So it have influenced for the past 10 years because it was recorded 10 years ago. Most have been great musicians. So I'm just, look, how do you get, because a lot of musicians, if you listen, if I read Nigerian musical history, most of the musicians were forced to become pastors because they didn't, well, some got involved into politics, then the political parties were no more. So they are forced to open churches. So we have two things in Africa. We have two people, two kind of group of people who can change the culture. The African youth can change the way they listen, how they listen to music, because the music we listen to are not educative. And few are able, like Fela, who have done his part, and the Fela family, his kids are trying to do their best in Nigeria there. But the youth are more following an European code, which is something great. We are following, we can educate the youth, because the teachers of today are the musicians, and then you have the pastors who are taking advantage. Today in Ghana or Nigeria or somewhere, if somebody is failing to make music, he's going to open a church. We have all seen that church or football have never built a nation. And so music will not build a nation. Maybe culture will build a nation. So following Western culture will not build Africa. So we are saying that maybe we should encourage the musicians more, mostly the singers, to, back to and sing about. There's
conscious music and clean content, yes.
Yeah, because the educational system is corrupt. The system we have in place is to educate the African. So the best way now, if we have musicians going forward, then they are those that the youth listen to a lot. They are those that the masses listen to a lot. There should be the vehicle of change, of education.
Okay.
There should be the vehicle of education. They have to have media that support this kind of conscious music. We don't have platform for conscious music in Africa.
Okay.
Maybe it should be platform where they are able to go and preach gospel of Africa.
Okay. Thank you very much. That's very pertinent. I think, Prof, over to you. That's the same thing that we were saying. The content in media, in everything, has to be Afro-conscious content, just like the Pan-African Day TV Afro-conscious media.
And as he's saying, music is a big medium for touching the mind. The music penetrates the mind. And if the music is carrying the culture and carrying the value of the culture, when I first came to Ghana, he would know this group. It was called Western Diamond. And they were playing Ghana High Life out of the Western region. How many people know the music of Ghana High Life? A music that just carried the spirit and the culture and the history of the people in all of its lyrics. The village, the city he went to, Latte, I was instructed and I got to meet her, one of the greatest spiritual leaders we had in Ghana. One of them was Nana Parabia, and her Akanadi shrine was in Latte. And so how many of our young people know Nana Parabia? We know Gandhi, we know this one, we know Buddha, but how many know Nana Parabia and the Akanadi shrine in Latte and the wisdom that came out of there? So music and culture, music is a tool of culture. What culture is the educational system of a people. It tells you your philosophy, your worldview, your values, your concepts, ideas, and principles. But how do you share that with the people? You share it through music, through dance, through theater. You see, the word education, the Western word, it comes from an ancient word in Greek, which has its root in ancient Egypt, means to educate. It means to bring something inside out, not to put something in. You understand? That's indoctrination and brainwashing when they're putting something in. To educate means to bring what is inside out. And the job of education is to give you the tool to accomplish that. You see, the philosophical tools, the ideological tools, the mathematical tools, the logical tools, the linguistic tools are the tools you're supposed to get to bring that which is spiritually your ancestral memory from inside out. And someone from Dominica, I missed his name, but I just want to tell him one of my favorite teachers was Dr. Edward Scobie from Dominica. He's an ancestor now, but he's one of the greatest teachers you've ever had. And he was the first Black fighter pilot in the Royal Air Force in Britain to fly as a fighter pilot in the Second World War, but he was also my professor, who I love dearly. And we helped build an organization called the Sons of Africa, which is 45 years old now.
Mm. Sons of Africa. Yes, I heard about. We talked about that last time. We're going to move more into it. I'm picking this caller, and yeah, I think one more call because we. Hello. Please conclude. Yes, now it's better. The other time was just crappy. Nobody heard anything.
I want to say I forgot myself that time. Anyway, sorry about it. What I was saying is that I just love what Uncle James was talking about so much. And I would like to, if possible, propose a question to my uncle then.
Go ahead.
And that is that, please, Uncle James, if possible to ask your knowledge and your abilities, your level, would you be able to then meet our is a country proper, that is Akufo-Addo? Because the reason I'm asking this is that I do not personally understand why we have somebody like Professor in Kepos that does the COA over in Ghana. COA, I hope you know COA, the COA FS, this herbal medicine. This brother is very good when it comes to immunity building methodology or remedy. It's very powerful. It's acceptable worldwide. However, we left this one and wanted to go for vaccination. My brain cannot comprehend that. I don't understand that why we have so much medicine, being a herbal or non-herbal, that our people know how to cure themselves. The food, the weather alone, the vitamins we gain from the sunshine and the food, the interaction of person to person. Why do we still have to go for vaccination? That even when what is the word? Our brothers in Madagascar, when they first announced the
COVID organic.
That's right. Why do we even?
Let me respond to you, Kofi. Okay. I've met the president.
Okay, he wants to respond. I think he got you already. All right.
Yeah, I met the president on numerous occasions. He may have forgotten we had a beer together one night, and the election he lost just before the one because the campaign was run out of our hotel in Cape Coast, the Sana Lodge, under my big brother, who was the treasurer of the NPP. And I'm very involved in Ghana. One of my closest comrades and teachers, is Nana Kwabena Nketsia, the fifth, the Omanhene of Esukado, who's also a professor at the University of Cape Coast. And so I do lecture in Ghana a lot when I'm there during the summer. I'm a member of the Panifest board. I was in the founding group of Panifest. I'm also installed as a chief for 40-something years now in Agogo. And I'll be returning to Agogo in March because my Omanhene will be celebrating his 45th year on the stool. So Ghana is a big part of my life, and I'm a big part of being in Ghana and very involved in Ghana on a lot of levels. I was very close to my little brother, President John Jerry Rawlings, who I visited each time I went there, and my heart is still crying and sad with his loss. So I will be doing a lot of things in Ghana. And I did see the president the last time I shook hands with him was at the funeral of a common friend back in February of last year in Cape Coast. So I try to, do as much as I can, working with the young people, working with other scholars on the ground, working with elements of government, especially in the tourism industry, to do just what I can do, my little piece. All of us can be one brick in the wall. I'm just one brick in the wall. You're a brick in the wall. Susan is a brick in the wall. So if we just try our best to do what we can with what the divine and the ancestors give us, our wall will be so solid, no one will ever penetrate it again.
All right, I'm taking this last call, Prof. And yeah, we round up. Hello?
Yes, ma'am. How are you?
Fine, thank you, sir.
Okay, yeah, I'm following the program for quite a long time now. I must say a big thank you to you for such an initiative, bringing up all these intellectual gurus who are there to refine and sharpen our minds, like Professor Small. Every time I listen to him, oh my God, he takes me to higher level, I'm an historian too. I did a history for bachelor's degree at the University of Sierra Leone. I'm a Sierra Leonean, so, it's like all his messages are just in alignment with what I have been thinking as a young man, So I must say a big thank you to him. But one question I would want to ask Professor and many listeners out there is, how are we gonna do as a collective, as a community, because that's we Africans, we function on a collectivist, on a community level, whatever we want to do, So how are we going to do, considering today's world, wherein our leadership, all of them have been brainwashed, all other directed, all functioning under the pretext of European, structures, How are we going to do? Because what I'm seeing now, we don't even speak as one, One of the things the traditional European education has done to we the African is to work against each other, Each time we bring something up that is probably going to do something for us, because we don't see as one, our perspective that we start cannibalizing each other's priority. We start going out, going off each other, And Kwame Nkrumah said that, in one of his speeches, in 1960, 61 or so onwards, before they start, all the leadership in Africa start enjoying the privileges of sovereignty. They have to first carve out a plan that that foster collectivist spirit that will let them work for the progress of Africa. If we live here today and go where many of you start enjoying these sovereign privileges, we will never work as one, and that is what's happening today. Most of the messages he said earlier on, it's like he was a Jewish prophet. He's coming alive. We are not working together as one. The AU, when they converge, they don't speak anything that probably we see Africa to stand in shoulder with the world stage. Now, in fact, you understand, they have been financed. All their sittings, the monies, when they have their sitting in Addis Ababa, it's being financed by European powers. And we know these people, they will never get tired of financing us, because it's very simple. When I finance your interest, I control your progress. That's what happened.
Absolutely.
And in Africa right now is brainwashing all the youngsters. I'm at 32. I'm at 32 years old. But watch all the youngsters, whether you go on Facebook, look at the US election. All you see, Africans are overly enthusiastic to talk about a US election because they just want to be accepted. I'm here in the US. I'm in US. I live in US. We are, in order to look good among equals, among other people, you have to tell people, I just bought my house in a white neighborhood. We just want to be accepted. We just want to be close to them. I don't know. It's painful. It's painful, It's painful when I see how we react. It's many young people who are saying, oh, but we want but mine. I believe, just like the professor said, I believe in change. But let's look at the last time I checked my history book. Most of the people who came with better minds, who wanted to make Africa for African accent, they were taken care of immediately, Immediately, we start bringing these people who are just stooges, young men. I believe in young leadership, but no, but one now, it doesn't have anything. He lacks all the penetrated insight to the complexities of the Ugandan people's problem. Uganda is 80% food sufficient. Most of countries, including mine, that are changing government like a toilet paper, where are we? We can't even feed ourselves, I know he's been there for long. He has exhausted his time. But hey, change is a process, I know the human mind. The human mind, we naturally grow tired of seeing the same thing over and over again. We might want to see changes. Sometimes not based on performance, but out of a mere desire to experience this one. And that mere desire to experience a change as what has led the North Africa right now into chaos. As what has toppled great men that we now regard as evil.
Okay.
Let me respond, because she's running out of time. So let me give you two quick suggestions. We're working on something now. One of my suggestions is, wherever the African are in the world, form study groups to study our history. Form study groups in our home and our household. 2 hours a week. Just devote 2 hours a week to watch a video or to read a book and discuss it. If we're on the continent, on the university campus, form Pan-African history study groups and move away from the Western either or. I know, Susan, it's time to go. But if you love Nkrumah, also love J.B. Dankwa. Study Nkrumah, but study Dankwa. Study Dankwa and study Nkrumah. And they had more in common than they had more apart.
I'm not eager to go. I just don't want us to put out this tell out information. Anyway, the background is still coming, and like you said, this is what we're putting in the background. Africans don't flinch, don't worry. And yes, we worry, but let's not dwell too much on. It always does. Professor, they're not just talking now. They've been putting out even the literatures that you say you want to buy, all his books, all the books of great the best African scholars in history and culture is coming up, and these study groups on every continent, every schools, from primary to secondary to universities to all, is what we're putting out here with this great mind sitting here. So I know he just want to quench all of us and whet our appetite. Yeah, we will. Please, for all of you that are commenting and want to get direct access or contact to Professor James Small and the whole entire team, please inbox us on our WhatsApp. And yes, we will make that possible as we can. Prof, one last word.
Yes, ma'am. Well, my last word would be African unity and unity. And don't just look to one of our leaders, like I just said. In Ghana, people tend to take Kwame Nkrumah and pit him against J.B. Dankwa. In America, they take Marcus Garvey and pit him against W.B. Du Bois. Let's stop that. Let's study all of our leaders, see what mistakes they made, see what good they left us, extract that good and leave those mistakes behind. Mm-hmm. Let's learn to be communal, collective, cooperative, even in how we look at history. Because our enemy has done a wonderful job of dividing and conquer us. So we choose sides. We want to either be with the man or you be with the woman. No, it takes the man and the woman to make the family. The African family is the foundation of civilization. So the man and the woman have to be partners. Otherwise, there's no creation. It doesn't happen.
Thank you very much, Prof. Thank you. That was wonderful. We catch up shortly in the meeting after the show.
Yes.
And yes, all right. It's been a wonderful pleasure, and let's keep it going. The spirit of
one. Susan, I always enjoy coming on your show. You have a wonderful day. Okay, my dear. Bye-bye now.
It's an honor. All right. Yeah. I want to thank all of you for watching, and I just wanted to make some few points very clear. It's not just African Daily TV media for talking. I love and I thank all of you that have contributed tonight. And exactly that's the spirit that we need. We need a satellite like we are talking. Yes, we are talking with big professors like this to see how we can make this work. The most important thing is not just changing our narratives or talking our African stories from the perspective, but it's really cleansing of Africa. And you've seen, and we have heard, we have learned, we have talked about it, we've dialogued about it, we've even argued a couple of times on it. What is the way forward? The way forward is our history and our culture. There is, and everything is embodied into it. Whether it comes to business, we have to do it the African way, the African model. If we combine other aspects of it, but what is supreme, like the professor was telling us, is our Africanness. Whether it's in developmental projects, we have to do it the community way, the village way. What comes first? Know you, know me. You know, all these principles of Ubuntu and the values that actually unite us comes from our history and our culture. So we can never do without. Whether we want to build the economic power of the continent of Africa, we must go back to visit how we do business and negotiate on what values, on what term with one another. if we want to build a strong, healthy family, community, continent, we have to go back to how our own respect in terms of culture, in terms of what roles we play according to our own systems, you know. And so culture and history is one of the biggest tools that we're going to use to move, to cleanse, some kind of like roll out the carpet on the continent. We can talk about every models, like Dr. Oba said yesterday. China only could outperform the world and become one world power because of its culture. They put their language, they put their money, they put their clothes, they put everything first, and they put their people first, they put their language first. So we are trying all we want to do on our own space now, in our own generation. And so we're going to put our footprints on it. So what is it that you can do? You can support in any way. We are open, we are creating, we are starting. You can donate to get, for us to get the satellite. You can also share and comment and be on these daily conversations. Call in, be a guest. And I want to thank all of you. It has always been a pleasure. Tomorrow we are going to talk about the PLO Lumumba Foundation goals and objectives. We all know that this is also one epitome or one channel, together with Joshua Maponga. Oh, anyway, he sends a lot of greetings because his fans on the Pan-African Daily TV have been asking, when is Joshua coming on? Joshua is right, fine, and he's coming out very soon. He's just putting one things together. Even Rutendo and all of them that you know that have been speaking in this Afrocentric way. Next week's we're going to talk too much about, or dwell too much about, the science of our African spirituality and culture is one of the way forward for us. Where do we start with our indigenous beliefs? How do we cleanse it? What is the procedure? What is the format that we need? Yes, like we say, we have to go back to the roots. Obviously, we're not going to go back and live on the trees or stuff like that, but we're going to add technology into what we are today, but we're going to keep these values first. We're going to prioritize them. They're going to be our premier. So tomorrow we are talking with Amos Onyango, the PA of the PLO Foundation chapter, and they get very good programs. And these are all issues that we can now nurture, because this foundation is operative in 48 African countries, and young people look up to a great leader and speaker and inspirator and critic, thinker of our time, Professor PLO Lumumba. Yes, he has put that forward, and he keeps his margin, and he inspired the young people on the continent. But of course, now it is time that we impact these young people with the knowledge that they need to be able to develop Africa. And it has no other format than teaching them who they are, what they should be, and how we need to develop Africa from an Afrocentric model. So I want to thank all of you for joining, and please stay tuned tomorrow. I already said it. Some of you missed it. The time we are slotting and we are switching. That's why the brother who called us, oh, you've been missing. I've not been missing, but we've been streaming on different programs. And I need your help. I need journalists out there. I need hosts of the Pan-African Daily TV. Please send in your credentials. And yes, we're all engaging to build the Africa we want. I don't want to be the only face on the Pan-African Daily TV every day. We are expanding and we are growing, so we can start streaming in the afternoon to evening. I need collaborators. I need your support. I know there are young women out there, very, very big dynamic brains that we need to nurture to grow up, to take over us. Yes, it's not because I'm tired. Someone is saying, Susan, are you tired? No. I'm not tired, but no one has a monopoly of knowledge. And we're building the biggest media that connects Africans worldwide. And we cannot only be hosting to us. As you've seen, the demand is so high. And so please, if you're a journalist out there or a passionate Afro-centric oriented, I'm not one in that terms of professional journalism, but of course I can pass over that message. That is also our African culture. What is it that you have? Like Professor said, education is bringing out the passion in you. So, and I know all of us do not lack that knowledge. We all have it. And even if you say, I dream to be one, like the Oprahs, like the Susan Tata, like the others, we also can pass it over to you. And the little that you have, we combine it. So please, I need you to drop me your WhatsApp message and tell us you want to be a host on the Pan-African Daily so we can stretch out the program. Of course, we would also do training seminars. We would do, workshops on how, you can position yourself. If you lack something, I'm also still learning. I still look up to Oprah. I still look up to all the other hosts and, how to be a little bit more, not too talkative like Susan does. Right. Yeah. So, yeah, it's all about us and from us to us. So we see us tomorrow. Like I said, watch out for the time zones. I might stream with the PL Olumumba Foundation earlier, but of course, you're going to be connected. So if you haven't subscribed and you have not clicked the notification bell, please do so. Do so. Yes, do so right now as you're watching me. So thank you to all the supporters and the funders and those who contributed tonight. Please do so well. Imagine I had 1,000 this evening. Wow. Imagine I had 1,000 every day that I sit here, 10 people just giving $100. We're going to get that satellite in no time. So thank you. Thank you so much. We see ourselves tomorrow. And keep the spirit. Bye.